After finishing the main story of Pokemon's recent DLC, there's a lot more to do, including seeing the ghastly apparition of a dead person. So, after we captured Terapagos in the depths of Area Zero, returning to the Crystal Pool in Kitakami of all places, we'll trigger a brand new event that both explains everything and nothing at all. We've been to the Crystal Pool as part of the Teal Mask story. This is a location at the top of Oni Mountain where Terra crystals seem to be sprouting up from the spring. While Briar is fascinated at the prospects these hold for terrestrialization, the locals have developed a legend about this place. There's a rumor that you can even meet people who have passed away. And that is in fact true, as we see the professor appear after Terapagos resonates with the crystals in the pool. This is the human professor that we never got to meet. They're able to surmise that they've been transported through both space and time. And so it seems as if we have some confirmation of what exactly Terapagos' powers are. Just some pretty basic stuff of being able to distort both space and time, very similar to other legendary Pokemon we've met in the past. With how crossed a lot of the Pokemon timelines are, constantly being broken and rebuilt as a means of entertainment and obtaining rare Pokemon, it's actually kinda cool to see this being used as the basis of the main story. It also explains why Paradox Pokemon were seen by Heath and his research team before the professor even built the time machine. Terapagos and the Terra Crystals can just move who and whatever across both space and time temporarily. They probably popped into Area Zero, were seen by a few people, and then popped back to wherever they came from. That's why the research team was only able to get blurry photographs or sketches that combine multiple Pokemon. They never got a good look at them. This also gives us some explanation for the point in Heath's expedition where he encounters Terapagos, in its full terrestrialized form mind you, and later awakens with a page containing his own handwriting that he has no memory of. The implication now being that he met a future version of himself who gave him that valuable information. Anyway, back to the professor. Things get interesting really fast as simply talking to them creates several paradoxes, as the legendary lizard Pokemon pops out of its Pokeball excited to greet them, even though this is a version of the professor who has never met them. We then tell the professor the Pokemon's actual name being either Koraidon or Miraidon, but as I mentioned, this is the first instance we create a time paradox. In this case, it's known as a bootstrap paradox or an object with no origin. If you have a family heirloom that's been passed down generation to generation, then go back in time and give that heirloom to your ancestor, the object has no origin and its mere existence is a paradox. When we met the legendary Pokemon, we were told that its name was Koraidon or Miraidon because that's what the human professor had named it. But then in the present day, we're the ones who tell the professor what its name is, therefore it originates from no one. Of course, the professor has no clear answer as to how and where our conversation is taking place, but they decide to continue it to gain as much information as we both can. Asking them why they're here just brings us to the theories about it being connected to Terapagos and the Terra Crystals. Asking them what they're researching reveals that they intend to bring Pokemon from different timelines into their own, basically explaining that as the origin of the Paradox Pokemon. Rather than coming directly from the past or directly from the future, the professor imagines that they come from alternate timelines where things evolve differently. The ancient Paradox Pokemon come from a timeline and universe where basically every Pokemon is a dinosaur, while the future Pokemon come from a place where everything is a robot. And as far as things go, I actually really like this as the origin for the Paradox Pokemon. In the beginning, it was a little fun to see the connections between them and their modern day counterparts, because there were a lot of fun and interesting implications and references, but the more I looked at the Pokedex and as soon as Walking Wake was revealed, I knew there was no way they were legitimately from different points on the same timeline. I figured that their existence in and of itself was a paradox, so I just accepted them as they are. All the Pokedex entries that draw from the Occulture magazine are meant to be sensational and too wild to be true because nobody knows what to think of these Pokemon. They don't even originate from our world, so we can't really comprehend them. But now that we have a bit more of a solid explanation that isn't even dwelt on for too long, I'm a fan of it, because it allows these weird and fantastical creatures to exist without weighing down the lore established with these Pokemon, especially the legendary beasts and the Swords of Justice. And now the last question we can ask the professor is about their family, because we know that Arven didn't have the best relationship with them toward the end of their life. And it's kinda sad to see them acknowledge that he's probably feeling very lonely without their parent. And the dramatic irony is that we know they don't end up making the amends that they should have. We can at least find comfort in knowing that Arven did in fact make friends with, the protagonist, and he isn't lonely anymore. And now it comes time for the professor to ask us the questions. Learning that they've been transported to the Crystal Pool in the land of Kitakami. Then they ask about the legendary Pokemon, only learning that we see it as one of our best friends, a message that unfortunately falls on deaf ears. Lastly, they notice we have Briar's book with us that tells the story of the events that occurred in Area Zero, as well as her additional research notes. Just as they're about to be transported back, they offer to trade their own Scarlet or Violet book for a copy of Briar's book. Come on, dude, that was literally the only thing I got out of this adventure. Briar didn't even give me any royalties for being in the book. And now with this information of the future with them back in the past, we can assume that the professor got exactly what they needed to complete their time machine. Again, it's all a paradox because we have all this information that was built off of their research, them actually completing the time machine, and that's what helps them even start their breakthrough to actually build it. Traveling down to the depths of Area Zero with their additional research notes, we can even read about our encounter with them. And if you read this first, it serves as a hint of where to go in order to activate this event. So yeah, that was quite a lot to unpack from barely 10 minutes of gameplay and story. I think it was an interesting move to have there be very little lore and explanation involved in the actual adventure down to Area Zero, instead having it be used as a means of completing Kieran's story arc, and having most of the final words on the matter being said by the human professor themselves with a very limited amount of time. I think that it explains everything well enough, at least to the same degree that most Pokemon lore is usually explained in the video games, and it still serves as a good basis and foundation to build the story on top of. It doesn't really matter what the Paradox Pokemon are and where they came from, but the lives and feelings of all the characters that we met along the way do. And when it comes to Terapagos itself, I think that lore could have been a bit more interesting, though I think we can see a bit of a connection in its power set. Being a Pokemon tied to the Terra Crystals, possibly even having a bit of itself inside them, including the Terra Orbs, could mean it brings its power of warping space, time, reality, or what have you whenever terrestrialization occurs. If I had to explain it, I would say that when a Pokemon terrestrializes to a different type, the power of Terapagos and the Terra Crystals allows it to tap into another timeline where that Pokemon is that type, at least just long enough for the duration of the battle. The crowns and being coated in the crystal sheen as well as the dramatic dim lights are all signifiers that the realities have been crossed. That's at least my idea for why Terapagos, being a Pokemon connected to different types in battle, has powers of being able to warp space, time, and connect different timelines in the lore. Well, that has been the story of the human professor, Paradox Pokemon, and the funny little turtle. Personally, I loved it being able to meet this character who we know a lot about but have never seen face to face. While they seem friendly enough in our interaction, I love that they still end up on the path that they were meant to, resulting in the insane finale of the base game. There was a sense of helplessness in how quickly the moment was over just as soon as it began, that brought a bit of a feeling of additional dread to an already bleak story. Great way to end things off. If you have any ideas for these complex complications, leave them in the comments below. Also, how do you think everything ties in together, and what are your thoughts on the origins, or lack thereof, that have been presented in this meeting? Anyway, I should get back to my own work. Hopefully I can get some help from my future self. Thank you to every channel member for your continued support, especially the Great Gators. Actual Clown, Alex Switz, Andika, Cheeseburger Lasers, DeAndre, Duncanchino II, Jen Eric, It's Mr. 800, Justin Dows, Justin R, Cosmo Zero, Lockadox, Mazhar Siddiqui, McCryptid, Meme Supreme, Nomad Nobi, Oleg Studios, P, Phantom, Peel the Genius, Quago, Savion Washington, Scotty Fan Club, Sean, Tajirai, Volity, and Pastel Blood. If you would like to support, get a shout out here as well as access to emotes for comments and live streams, you can become a channel member today. We're getting so many members here on the channel that I think going into the new year, I'm not necessarily going to shout out everybody at the end of every video, but instead we'll take a random set of people to put into the shout out for that video. And that will also definitely include anyone who's joined as a new member for that week. Though don't worry, I'll definitely be working on some additional perks that will just kind of beef everything up, so stay tuned for that. But anyway, you can also follow me on Twitter for more memes and Twitch for more streams. Anyway, this is GatorX, and I'll catch you all later.
Start your adventure together in the Pokemon trading card game Scarlet and Violet. Coming soon. Products sold separately, cards vary by pack.